most doctors think that the most common way that Lyme disease is transmitted is by tick bites, but in Texas, probably the most common way is by mosquito bites. So it doesn't have to be by just ticks. It's any biting insect, fleas, mites, lice, scabies, etc., can all transmit borreliosis as well.
Let's ditch the quick fix and dive into today's conversation. Welcome, everybody. My guest today is Dr. William Lee Cowden. Dr. Cowden is chairman of the Scientific Advisory Board and professor of the Academy of Comprehensive Integrative Medicine. He has been a USA board-certified cardiologist and internist and a licensed homeopathic medical doctor, but recently retired in 2019 from patient care and now is teaching full-time. Dr. Cowden has been studying integrative medicine on his own since he was in medical school at the University of Texas Medical School at Houston in 1975. Dr. Cowden has pioneered successful treatments for cancer, Lyme disease, atherosclerosis, cardiomyopathy, various neurological conditions, silicone implant disease, and many other illnesses. But he gives credit to God, Jesus, and the Holy Spirit as the ultimate source of all healing. Dr. Cowden is joining us today to have a conversation about neurodegenerative diseases with an emphasis on ALS. So welcome back to Ditch the Quick Fix, Dr. Cowden. This is the second time on, and I'm excited to have you on again.
Great to be on with you.
So it'd be good, to share just a little bit of the prominent neurodegenerative disease history that, we're all pretty familiar with, but if maybe you could kind of list some of those degenerative diseases and give us a little bit of a background and where we're at today and what we're looking at for the future.
Yeah, I think the chronic neurodegenerative disease that most people are aware of and concerned about is Alzheimer's dementia.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not the only type of dementia that can keep us from having appropriate mental function. There's vascular dementias and toxic dementias and post-traumatic brain syndrome and so on. So that's a big category.
Right.
And then multiple sclerosis is a pretty big category as well. And that's people having significant neurological impairment that usually migrates around the body, from one extremity to another, or impairs their vision or impairs their speech or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And then Parkinson's, which is a increasing condition in this country, where people have what they call cogwheel rigidity. They have jerky motions of their extremities, and
Right.
they have a hard time getting up out of a chair. They have what we call paralyzed faces. They can't have a hard time smiling, and those most people have heard of those and are concerned about those. And one other one, I guess, for children is autism.
Right.
Autism is a huge issue in this country. When I was in medical school, it was 1 out of 10,000 children. Now it's 1 out of 50.
And it's progressing so rapidly. It's a terrible disease.
Absolutely is. And there's lots of reasons probably why that is, but it appears that that antibiotic use has a big role in it, and probably vaccine administration does as well. The Amish community doesn't use vaccines, and they have almost zero autism. So that's one proof of it.
Definitely a connection there. And then, you consider all the toxic environmental exposures. And so what are the primary causes of these degenerative brain degeneration conditions?
Well, it varies quite a bit from person to person. In my experience, almost all of them have a toxic load in their brain, whether that's heavy metals or pesticides, herbicides, solvents, pharmaceutical drugs, etc. But also, most of them have a microbial process going on in the brain that goes unrecognized by the allopathic medical community. Dr. Judith McCloskey in Switzerland determined that in Alzheimer's patients that 90% had a spirochete, or a spiral-shaped bacteria in their brain. Now that's a lot, and she proved that with very good science on autopsies. and then Dr. Alan McDonald figured out that most of those people that have spirochetes in their brain also have little roundworms in their brain, contributing to the neurodegenerative diseases. And so we'll be talking about that at our conference also coming up.
So, what are the sources of those bacterial exposures? What did these doctors find in their studies as far as, they found it in the autopsies, but what was their conclusion as how they got there?
Well, yeah, so Dr. McClossy's studies showed that 25% were Borrelia species. Borrelia is the
Mhm.
bug that causes Lyme disease in the
Mhm.
United States, just called borreliosis in other countries. And, uh, and then 65% were from Treponema species. Now, the Treponema that most doctors would be familiar with is Treponema pallidum, which causes syphilis. And Treponema pallidum is a spiral-shaped bacteria like the Borrelia burgdorferi that causes Lyme disease. But most of the Treponema species that Dr. McCloskey found in the brains of autopsies of patients that have Alzheimer's dementia were not Treponema pallidum. It was other treponemal species that are found in the mouth.
Okay.
So, and so every time you brush your teeth or floss your teeth, you have any bit of blood at all, you just seeded your bloodstream with Treponema species that travel through the bloodstream, and some of those burrow their way into the brain.
Yeah, and some of the exposure, the environmental exposure, include tick bites and others, right?
Yeah. So most doctors think that the most common way that you know Lyme disease is transmitted is by tick bites, but in Texas, probably the most common way is by mosquito bites. So it doesn't have to be by just ticks. It's any biting insect, fleas, mites, lice, scabies, etc., can all transmit borreliosis as well.
So that's one of the heavy causes. What are some of the other factors that weigh into the degenerative processes? Medical information has become tough to sort through. Between politicization, institutional bias, and mass media, it's become tough to find the things that lead you to getting healthy. The Unaverage Health Summit is a free online video event for people seeking natural methods to kill brain fog, eliminate bloating, blast fatigue, and live optimally. You'll get access to discussions with natural health experts like Dr. McCullough, Dave Asprey, Dr. Petros, Dr. Schaffner, and many others on the cutting edge of medicine. It's happening soon and only available for a limited time. Go to unaveragehealth.com to get your free ticket to this online event. That's unaveragehealth.com. Again, it's free and access is ending soon. This is a great opportunity for you to continue your journey to becoming the best health advocate you can have. Hope you take advantage of this.
Yeah, well, emotions play a huge role, and Dr. Reiki Hammer in Germany was
Okay.
an oncologist who figured out that most cancers are triggered by an emotional conflict, a sudden emotional shock, and when you resolve that emotional conflict, the cancers just go away. So he had a 5-year survival rate of 92% in his patients that had stage 3 and stage 4 cancer. To give your audience a point of perspective, the typical 5-year survival rate for patients that have stage 4 cancer is about 5%, and for stage 3 cancer is about 20%. So 92% is a whole lot more than that.
Huge.
So yeah, but after that, Dr. Hammer figured out that emotional conflicts were creating all kinds of other chronic diseases, arthritis, muscular diseases, neurological diseases, psychiatric diseases, et cetera, depending on what the emotional conflict was and so on.
That is so huge. The impact of how positive the mind is and how
Yeah,
stress and trauma impacts your health.
yeah, yeah, and diet plays a huge role as well in most chronic diseases. We have what do you call fast foods in the United States. I say that's those fast foods are to speed you to your grave.
Well, that's a different way of saying it, but that is a really true way of thinking about it.
Yeah, yeah. But people in the United States eat for pleasure, and if it happens also be good for the health, and that's a nice side benefit. In many other countries around the world, they say eat for health first. If it happens to also taste good, that's a nice side benefit. They have it right, we have it wrong.
Definitely,
Yeah,
definitely.
but there's been such a nutrient loss from our food supply in the United States. In 1935, the U.S. Department of Agriculture did an evaluation of the nutrient content in commonly grown vegetables in the United States, and found that between that date, 1935 and 1969, there had been a 70% loss of nutrients from those same vegetables,
Wow.
because it was corporate farmed, growing the same crops on the same ground every year, depleting the nutrients from the soil, using artificial fertilizers, never any organic compost, nothing to put nutrients back into the soil. And so maybe we've lost another 70+% since 1969. So we're down to maybe 9% of what we had in 1935. Little wonder that we have so many diseases in this country.
Yeah, there's such an attack on the body, so many chronic diseases and illnesses, and that's just a terrible, terrible part of it. So yeah, so we got basically the environmental exposures, we got stress, we got the lack of nutrient dense food. What are other factors that impact brain health?
Well, yeah, the biggest one I think is actually attitude. Most people that have a severe chronic disease, whether that's stage 4 cancer, or whether it's advanced cardiomyopathy, or whether it's amyotrophic lateral sclerosis (ALS), if that patient goes to the typical allopathic doctor, that doctor says, "Well, there's no hope for your condition. Go home and die. Go home and suffer," and so they steal any hope that patient might have had left, and it's just criminal, in my opinion. So one of the first things that I've always done as an integrated practitioner is to find out what kind of words had been spoken over that person, and uh, basically cast those words out like demons.
Right, right,
Okay. Because
which is good.
they're acting like a demonic influence. And so you say, well, how do you do that? Well, you say, okay, a patient with advanced cancer, stage 4 cancer. You say, well, about 20 years ago, I had a patient almost exactly like you that had that same cancer, and the doctor said that you have 2 months to live, 4 months to live, whatever, and that patient's still alive after we started treatment together. And then I would tell them 2 or 3 more stories like that, and they say, "Oh, well, maybe what that doctor said isn't true."
Right,
Okay, so you start putting doubt in their mind about the prognostication. Uh, most people are familiar with the placebo effect, which means you expect something bad, and sorry, expect something good. Because you expect something good, you see something good. But most people are not familiar with the nocebo effect. So with the nocebo effect, the doctor says something negative and you expect it, and because you expect it, you see it because you expect it.
right, right. Yeah, you just have no
Yeah,
hope, and they just
yeah,
squash
yeah.
any hope.
Yeah, so these people that have those kind of things going on in their head develop a grieving process. As soon as they get the word amyotrophic lateral sclerosis from their neurologist, they get a grieving process that starts. So they go through denial. How can this possibly be happening to me? Shock, disbelief, and then they go through anger. I'm so angry at the world, at myself for having eaten junk food all my life, for not detoxing periodically, blah blah blah, and then
Right,
they go through the bargaining process. God, well, if you'll just take this away from me, I'll be a better person for the rest of my life.
right,
And then they drift into depression finally, when they figure out that the bargaining is not working, and they go into a deep depression, sometimes to the point of committing suicide,
mm,
even though that wasn't necessary because probably their condition was reversible. And but if they make it through the depression and kind of come out on the other side, they finally go into the acceptance phase. And the acceptance is, well, I, everything's not lost. I can still pray. I can still think. I can still breathe.
right.
Whatever they're able to do still, and they focus on that. So they start focusing on the glass half full, not half empty.
It's so positive. And so, yeah, let's dig into the Lou Gehrig's disease a little bit deeper, ALS, and maybe give a little bit of what is the common history or the common thought of history, and then some of the patterns. What is it doing to the brain? How is it impacting? And I know some of the stats historically have been pretty grim, and you're talking about that attitude right now, and that creates a negative outlook, which basically defeats the optimism to try to get well. So yeah, if you could kind of share a little bit of the detail on ALS and
Yeah.
what's happening with it.
Yeah. Well, statistically speaking, 50% of the people that get ALS are dead within 3 years. So, that's not great prognosis,
Right,
there's a lot of people that live, 10, 20, 30 years with it, and, they still have some neurological impairments, but they're not progressing because they have the right attitude. They've gotten, worked on their emotions. They've cleaned up their diet. They've done some things, proactively to stop the progression or even reverse the condition. And at our conference coming up out in Salt Lake City, September 29th through October 1st, we're going to have probably over a dozen people there that used to have advanced ALS that no longer have ALS. And
that's awesome.
so the people that come can actually talk to them and say, well, what did you do? How'd you get over this? And so firsthand experience always, makes a huge impact, not only because, that person then knows what to do about their diet and detoxing and all that kind of stuff on a physical level, but they know what to do about the mental, emotional aspects of the condition, to get out of the grieving process, to get freed up from the old emotional traumas that triggered the illness in the first place in many cases. And this is going to be a fantastic conference. And people say, well, why would I want to go to an ALS conference? The chance of getting ALS is extremely remote. But what they don't recognize is that ALS is one of the most complex of all the neurodegenerative diseases. And once you resolve and solve the ALS, you probably have the solution for all the other neurodegenerative diseases, including Alzheimer's dementia. And most people in this country are very concerned about becoming demented because they've seen a loved one, a friend, a
Right.
neighbor, somebody that has suffered and in many cases died with Alzheimer's dementia. And it's just a terrible illness. You're still physically in your body, but your mind is gone.
Yeah, yeah. It's tragic. So what actually happens to the brain with ALS? What are the findings, in
Yeah.
the brain tissue?
Yeah. Well, when they do the autopsies, they find that there's areas of destruction in the brain, and the destruction can come from a lot of different things. But there's an inflammatory process that goes on that's out of control. I call it the brain on fire, and so with patients with Alzheimer's dementia, the brain's on fire as well. Patients with children with autism, the brain's on fire. So you have to put out the fire, whatever the cause is. Whether that's microbes or toxins or immune reaction to those critters and
Right,
toxins or whatever. And when you do that, then you stop the progression. Once you can stop the progression, then it's possible for the brain to regenerate. I was taught in medical school that once the brain degenerates and dies, that it's gone. A brain cell degenerates and dies, it's gone forever. But that's not true. We have clear cut evidence that stem cells do migrate into the brain and create new neurons. And a lot of people say, well, what if I can't get my stem cells to go to the brain and do that? Well,
right,
we do know that there's a process called neuroregeneration that's involved primarily with dendritic connections. The dendrites are the little finger-like projections that come off the neurons that connect one cell to another cell. And a lot of people thought, well, Einstein was a really bright guy. When we do his autopsy, he's going to have lots more neurons than anybody else. Well, they found actually that he had a bit fewer neurons than the average person,
oh,
but
that's
he had
interesting.
but he had almost 10 times the number of dendrites as the average person.
Okay.
Okay.
And that's ultimately, yeah, the connections that are on each neuron, right?
Yeah.
It's my
Connection for one.
understanding that there's typically about 10,000 connections per neuron. Is that right?
Don't know the number, but yeah, there's lots between between each neuron and the other neurons in the
It's
brain.
an incredible yeah, schematic when you consider what my understanding is that there's about 100 billion neurons in the average adult. Is that your understanding as well?
That's about right, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I'd heard that it was about a 10,000 connection per neuron. So the complexity of that is just mind-boggling.
Yeah, it is absolutely. Just think about the fact that you can reflect back on something that happened when you're 5 years old and remember it just like it happened yesterday, unless you got Alzheimer's dementia, right? But
Right.
you say, well, how does the brain remember that long? It just is beyond comprehension, I think. Man thinks he's so smart by creating artificial intelligence. Well, artificial intelligence pales compared to what God created.
No, I agree. And so yeah, that regenerative process is what has been misunderstood ultimately, and leads to that kind of doom and gloom kind of prognosis, right?
Well, yeah, it's lack of knowledge. Hosea 4:6 in the Bible says, "My people shall perish for lack of knowledge." So if a person gets the label of ALS and doesn't have the knowledge that it's a reversible condition, then they perish because they believe that that's true. And I've had countless patients with advanced cancer and advanced cardiomyopathy and also with neurodegenerative diseases who are told by their allopathic physician, "You've got 2 months to live." And on the 60th day, they die.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like pre-programmed death.
Yes.
Okay.
It's
And
just,
it's avoidable, preventable. All they got to do is get that thought out of their head,
mhm.
take every thought and imagination captive.
Yes, yes, absolutely. So maybe share just a little bit more on some of the historic approaches that were taken that just really didn't help. I know that there isn't a drug out there for neurodegenerative diseases, really, or ALS, but
Well,
what are some of the
well,
historic
yeah,
approaches
yeah,
compared?
there's a couple of drugs that are being promoted by the pharmaceutical industry for ALS, but they have very little impact from what we can see so far. So the answer is not going to come from pharmaceutical medicine. Most people don't know where the word pharmaceutical comes from, but it comes from the Greek word pharmakia, which means witchcraft. So maybe we shouldn't be looking for our answers in witchcraft. We should be looking for our answers in nature. God,
Yes.
nature was created by the God of the creation, and so maybe that's where the answers are. And not in pharmakia.
Yeah, I agree. I think we may have had this conversation before, but I read a book by Dr. Del Bredesen, and right at the very start, he said there isn't going to be a medicine, that's going to cure Alzheimer's. I think the book is how to
Yeah,
end
yeah,
Alzheimer's epidemic, and he really switched into nature
yeah,
and started to
yeah,
see people reversing out of dementia, and
yeah.
he'd never seen that before, and treating over, I think, 10,000 patients.
Yeah, well, I commend him for writing the book. But how he got onto that is one of his patients who had reversed dementia came to him and said, "Don't you want to know what I did?" And he said, "Yeah, I guess I do actually." So so he listened and he started investigating and started trying some of his patients on changing their diet and giving them some supplemental nutrients and started seeing some improvement. So hurrah for him for listening to his patients.
It's
Many of the most important things I've ever learned in practice, I learned from my patients. Sometimes they knew that they taught me, sometimes they didn't know.
yeah, I same here. I've been in practice now for a while, and you just can, it's always a learning experience. You just got to keep learning. There's always opportunity. So let's talk just a little bit more about the conference. Where is it at, and who should come, and what are some of the things that people could expect there?
Well, we very, very, very much want patients to come if they have any concern about neurodegenerative diseases of any type, not just ALS. If they have somebody in the family that has Alzheimer's, and they're concerned that they may get Alzheimer's themselves, or they want to come find a solution for their loved one, then they should be there because there'll be answers that are presented from the stage that will help any kind of neurodegenerative disease, not just ALS. As I said, we're focusing on ALS because that's the biggest and toughest neurodegenerative disease out there. And if you solve that, you can solve a lot of other neurodegenerative diseases. But we want those people that come to tell their physician about it and
Mhm.
try to get their physician to come. And it doesn't matter whether their physician's a neurologist or a family practice doctor or a urologist. We don't care, or a chiropractor or a naturopath or whatever their interest is, whatever their background is. We don't care what that is, because the things that are going to solve and cure ALS can be done by any practitioner, no matter what their label is. And so what we're going to do is we're going to if you bring your practitioner to the conference, you come up to the organizers of the conference at the conference and say, I brought this practitioner, and they'll give you $100 check. Say, okay, thank you.
Nice.
Yeah, but we want to get the doctors there, because the doctors have such a key role in the reversal of these conditions.
Yes.
If they're continuing to tell the patients, well, there is no hope for that condition, then that's counterproductive. We want them to stop saying that and saying, well, there are some people that have had reversals, because I met some of them at the conference. And so we want them to go back home and start talking about the reversal of ALS, which should also be answers for the reversal of Alzheimer's and Parkinson's and multiple sclerosis and a lot of these others as well.
And so is it a 3-day conference?
It's 3 days of conference. There'll be physicians and the public in the same room, but we have breakout sessions for doctors and breakout sessions for the patients with ALS and their caregivers. But on Sunday, October 2nd, is only for physicians from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. And
Okay.
we're gonna have a multi-practitioner think tank. So
Okay.
we want practitioners to stay over for that Sunday event, because we're going to have, I'm pretty sure we're going to come up with some answers there, because we're
Okay.
going to have so many practitioners of so many diverse backgrounds, all thinking about the same concern at the same time. And there's power in numbers. And so we expect to come away from that think tank on Sunday with some good answers for people.
That's very, very positive. And so, how would one be able to know, and where do they go to find out about this
Yeah,
the information to sign up and get there?
yeah. Healing ALS Conference.org.
Okay.
Yeah, and if they forget the conference part, they'll still get the healingals.org, and that'll have a link on there to get them back to the healingalsconference.org.
Okay.
But right now there's a 50% or sorry, $50 discount for people that hear your podcast and put the coupon code in the box on the checkout page.
Okay.
Ditch the quick fix is the coupon code. Just no spaces or whatever. And you do it all caps if you want. Doesn't matter.
Okay.
Yeah. So we want to give people that hear it from your podcast a $50 discount to come to the conference. And if they've already got obligations for that date, then they should still go to the healingals.org to
Okay.
put in their name and their email address. And then later, when we send out information about video recordings or anything else, they'll be able to get access to that.
Perfect. Yeah. So healing alsconference.org, and
signing up for the conference.
Signing up for the conference, and then healingals.org if you can't make it, and but would like to be able to get access to the materials. And that particular website has more information just in general, right, on ALS?
Oh, yeah, the healingals.org is amazing, because they have video testimonials from many of the people that have reversed ALS themselves. Okay, that's just fantastic to listen to some of those.
Awesome. All right. Anything else that we need to cover before we sign off here?
No, I think you've done a great job at interviewing, and I appreciate your having me on such short notice. But we want to get the word out to these people that could come to the conference, especially the doctors that oftentimes their schedule gets booked up and they can't come if they don't have enough notice. So we appreciate you getting me on early enough to be able to get the word out to some of them.
Absolutely. And before we sign off too, you've got a bunch of opportunities for people to follow you as well, just on the other things that you're doing. Where do we go for that?
Yeah, well, my personal website is drleecowden.com, drleecowden.com. And there's some interesting things on there. One thing that and nothing on there has any cost, so it's all free. But one thing that everybody listening would benefit from is going to my website and finding the article that's called "Visualization, Shouting, and Forgiving." And if they'll do that, print off that article and read it and do it, they'll find huge difference in their health. Huge, just by doing some visualization and shouting.
That's
And
awesome.
yeah, and then the other website that I'm involved with is
Yes.
acimconnect.com. That's the Academy of Comprehensive Integrative Medicine. We started that in 2008, and there's over 1,000 hours worth of educational information on there. Most of it you have to pay for, but if you put in the search window on the first page something that you're interested in, and a course pops up, and it's not terribly expensive, you say, well, I'm going to see what that's about, and then you click on it. Pay. It's usually about $30 for an hour worth of very valuable information. And then if you get enough benefit from it, you say, well, I'm going to go back and look, see what else there is.
Definitely would recommend people check that out. And there's just so much opportunity there, and just kind of definitely reverse the thought process of how we can manage these conditions, and take and become more of our own health advocate, and take advantage of what God has given us for sure. Through his creation, with food and air and water and rest and those kinds of things. So
Yeah.
a pleasure to have you again on the show, and hope people definitely take advantage of this conference, live or even post-conference information. There's just a lot there to be gained. So
Yeah.
thank you again, Dr. Cowden.
Yeah. Thank you for having me on. And I just pray that you'll be blessed in everything that you do.
Oh, thank you very much. Hey, everybody, I hope you have a blessed and a very hopeful day. We'll see you next time. Hey, everyone, I just want to add a little bit more information on the Healing ALS Conference in Salt Lake. If you sign up to go and register at the hotel by the end of August, you get a really good group rate of $139 a night. It is the Salt Lake Marriott Hotel downtown at City Creek in Salt Lake City, Utah. And so September 28th through October 2nd. And October 2nd, that's a Sunday, is for physicians only. So anyway, I wanted to add in this opportunity to get a good discount if you sign up to go to the conference by the end of August. I hope you take advantage of it. I hope you have a great time if you get the chance to get there. And again, I just have a great day.